Today on the show, we set the tone for the final 3 weeks of the season. Can Nebraska go bowling? We'll discuss it coming up.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the basketball season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Okay, hello. It is Monday morning. It's a Matt Rhule Monday. We'll hear from the head coach this morning. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer from 1620 The Zone in Omaha is with me. Rhule's up around 11:30 this morning. His football team took a few days off this weekend after holding 3 practices during the bye week. Nebraska is, of course, getting ready for USC, the trip to Los Angeles, playing at the Coliseum, 3 p.m. Central Time on Saturday. Connor, what are the most pressing questions for Nebraska as it heads into this USC week?
I think we start where we talked about right there in the open. Can they find one more win somewhere? And I don't know how you feel about it, Mitch, like their chances to do so. I have heard a wide swath of opinions from people on, sort of handicapping their chances to either get one more win, or I still think they're going to get 7, or there's no chance they win any more games, or hey, they got a chance to win.
It is all over the map.
It's everywhere. I guess, what would you say to that as we set the tone for these final 3?
Well, I'd say that's really no surprise because it depends on which Nebraska team you're looking at, and totally. We've seen wild variations of the 2024 Nebraska football team just in the last couple of games it's played. So if you choose to see the high side, you can see this team going 9-4. still a possibility.
I guess so.
Mathematically, it's a possibility, or you could certainly see this team going 5-7. So that's a wide range of outcomes, which is fitting for the wide range of Nebraska football teams that we've seen recently. I think one thing has become clear since Nebraska last played, and that was, of course, the UCLA game, which seems like, as I was saying that and those words were coming out of my mouth, that was the last game Nebraska played. It seems wrong. Like, it seems like there's been so much, and we're only at Monday of the week after the bye week. But that was the most recent game. It was UCLA beat Nebraska.
It's 9 days ago,
27-20. Not 99 days ago. It was 9 days ago, and it was the 3rd consecutive loss for Nebraska. I think one thing has become clear in the 9 days since that game, 8 days. This team has to find a way to get to 6, and It is truly a bowl game or bust kind of situation for Matt Rhule and his football team. Now, what does that mean? What's the alternative if they don't make it? It just means that they're going to go into the offseason in a world of hurt in just about every way you can imagine, from a roster building standpoint, from a momentum standpoint, from what the beginning of next season looks like. They must find a way to get to a 6th win. We've heard it from Rhule in no uncertain terms. We've seen it from him in the moves that he made last week to bring in consultants. And we heard it from Troy Dannon in an interview that he did with Husker Online with Steve Sipple and Sean Callahan, essentially saying, yes, this is how important it is that Nebraska gets to 6 wins this season. It is essential.
Well, no, my words. That there's still time to salvage it, right? Like, if you start out 5-1, and you feel pretty good about yourself, and Nebraska was, ranked, it feels like 7 lives ago, but they were ranked during this season. You start off 5-1, and now you're 5-4. if you get to 8 wins at the end of the season, I don't know that everything that happened in the middle there while you were sliding is forgiven or, forgotten, but it certainly hits a little less hard. If Nebraska finishes even 6-6 on the year, and especially if they finish 5-7 and they lose their final 3 games of the regular season, then that bad taste is in your mouth all the way throughout. And that's to your point. The program desperately needs a bowl game. So what is bust? Bust is that there's no momentum and it feels really rocky going into the offseason. You're going to have a hard time convincing people that things are headed in the right direction. There will have to be sort of, some changes, and there probably are on the docket for this offseason. But if you don't, if Nebraska finds a way somehow, it would be a surprise, I think, at this point to end the season on an upswing. Then you leave yourselves a little bit more wiggle room there. There's a ton on the line.
There's unquestionably another chapter, an important chapter to be written for this football team in November. And I think there was a feeling of dread and doom after the UCLA game, just because Nebraska had put so much into that middle stretch, that time between the 2 byes, and to fall flat in the way that it did and go 0-3, it felt somewhat hopeless back on November 5th. November 2nd.
That's right.
And yes. Yeah. And it's not it's not like that now. I feel like there is another chapter. There is. It could go downhill, it could go uphill, but it is not going to be steady. Like in the world of college football, you generally, and we'll talk about this later when we get to the subject of recruiting, you are not staying still. You're either moving forward or you're moving back. And that very much is the feel for me with what is in front of Nebraska over the next 3 weeks.
So you're saying this book that we're reading of this season, you use chapters, this book that we're not sure if it's a horror story or an uplifting, like inspirational type of deal. Like we just don't know yet. Like the cover is just blank. There's no clues on the outside. It's just, it's kind of, I agree with you. Like it's all up in the air. Nebraska has a chance to erase some of what they undid in October, in November. Now that would follow the opposite script of what it has been over the last several seasons for Nebraska football. Usually it's the surge in October or a slight surge in October to a falling off
that last year,
the planet in November. So they're going to have to reverse it. So I mean, that would be quite the ending to this book.
Yeah. I think there's already some artwork coming into focus on the cover of the book. Like the book has a look to it, but the final chapter has yet to be written. And I feel more certain of that. There was some feeling in my brain that the final chapter had already been written, or it was starting to be written after the UCLA game. I feel, for whatever reason, more certain of the fact that there is a final chapter that's going to it's going to tell us something that we don't know about this team, whether it's good or bad. I think either it's going to go in a direction where they have good vibes going into the offseason because this team showed a lot of progress in the month of November, or it kind of falls off of a cliff. You might think, I think the standard storyline with Nebraska football over the last few years would kind of take you so that you did the month of November just rode out here, and Nebraska never really, it didn't look like it gave up. It still fought really hard, but it could not find the success that was out there. I think this one's going in a different direction, either for the better or for the worse. We'll see.
Yeah, on this sort of idea, and we'll hear from Matt Rhule today on Monday, but I do wonder which buttons Matt Rhule, the button pusher, decided to push during this bye week. I mean, he kind of set the tone last Monday going into the bye week where, he talked about the players. At some point you sort of have to, look over there. Hey, like, you are sat, you have to block the guy if there's a guy to block. I'll admit, I hate talking about the emotional stability of this team all the time, but I do really think that is the thing with this group.
I know.
For
Feels
the
like we
final
talk about that every episode.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah. When we come back, let's go take a break, and we'll talk about some of those things that Matt Rhule discussed last week, and he talked about player accountability. But the big storyline coming out of last week was that the people who were going to come in and help this program, and notably Dana Holgorsen. When we come back after the break, we're going to ask the question, and Matt Rhule is going to be asked the question today: what is Dana's job?
All right, it's Zapper here for the FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle all the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. I had the guts this weekend to take the Carolina Panthers to win a football game on the money line and the FanDuel Sportsbook. And guess what? I am profitable in that regard. You could be just like me if you get a wild hair in the middle of a game or before the weekend even starts. Head to FanDuel.com to join today, and your incentive is if you're a new customer, you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That is with our friends from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, welcome back. Connor and Mitch back with you. Taking a look back at the weekend, some shakeups in the college football playoff. We have just quickly on outside of the Big Ten before we get to the Big Ten, there is a giant jumbled mess atop of the SEC right now that needs to sort itself out a little bit in the final couple weeks here. And we are in the season where those teams are playing Mercer and the Citadel. So we'll see what gets sorted out.
Florida.
That's true. The picture at the top of the Big Ten is a little bit more clear. It appears as if it's all but a lock at this point that 4 Big Ten teams are making the college football playoff.
Indiana's win against Michigan on Saturday, I think, put the Hoosiers in a spot where it's going to take some real shenanigans, some craziness for Indiana to miss out on the playoff. The Hoosiers, after a bye week, have Ohio State and then finish with Purdue. So Indiana might go the entire season without beating a ranked team, be 11-1, and get a home game in the CFP. Now it could slide. It could slide to that 9 through 12 spot and have to go on the road for the first round of the CFP, or the BCS, as Kurt Cignetti referred to the playoff. Kurt Cignetti went into the mode of coach after the game who doesn't know what the 12-team college football playoff even is. That was his response about how this might help us in the BCS or whatever it is. Like, the playoff is out there. It's all anyone in the sport is talking about. It is the engine that is creating the billions in revenue that Kurt Cignetti is going to benefit from, that his Indiana football team is going to benefit from as a member of the Big Ten. Yet as his team goes 10-0 and into a position where it's almost a lock for the college football playoff, he is now entering the mode because he doesn't want this to infect his locker room to where I don't even know what it's called, what it is, how many teams play in it, when the games are, what we would do if we made it. It's just that's where Indiana football's at.
He does have like a lovable like aloofness, you know. And he doesn't like he definitely knows. He's very aware, but he plays it off really, really well. So yeah, it appears as if Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana are all going to the playoff at this point. We still are a week away from that Ohio State-Indiana game. Elsewhere, UCLA beat Iowa on Friday night at the Rose Bowl. So that we have some really, really interesting setups here in the back couple weeks of the season. And frankly, Mitch, a lot of teams in the conference are in the same position as Nebraska, where, man, you got to win a couple games here to feel good about yourself to get on the upswing. That is, of course, unless you're Purdue, and there's no chance of that happening.
Yeah, I will review quickly what we did in our Week 11 picks, and they were ugly. We picked Iowa. You did get Rutgers correct against Minnesota. We both picked Indiana, but Indiana did not cover. We picked Penn State, won that one. Nationally, Georgia, that was a bomb. Texas Tech against Colorado, that was a bomb for us. Picking LSU to beat Alabama, that was incorrect. We did get Missouri against Oklahoma on a wild finish there in Columbia, and we missed the bonus bet. So when I add these numbers up, they are going to be really, really ugly. It would have been a bad weekend to go on the FanDuel sports app or sports book and make a bunch of bets. So
yeah,
I hope that the Carolina Panthers were your only entry into the into the wagering world.
You got to make sure you pick the right spots, Mitch. That's what it's all about. So let's talk about Dana Holgorsen for one more time until Matt Rhule gets to comment on it today. It had a whole week.
Pressing question.
Yeah, it had a whole week of a cycle and try to figure out, all right, what's going to happen here? What's it going to be like? And Rhule will finally talk about it today. So how much, the question that I asked people the most last week is how much effect can he have on the offense in the short term, meaning the last 3 weeks of the regular season? How much effect can he have on the team in the short term? Do you have a more like fleshed out sort of answer to that question, or have you thought about that much since the announcement that he was coming on board?
I have thought about it. I don't have a fleshed out answer. I think I have an idea of the direction that Matt Rhule will go today. I think he's going to downplay it. I think Matt Rhule is going to say that it was important to have it's been important. It is important to have an outside perspective on what's going on, and that Holgorsen can help Nebraska with some conceptual things, but that he's not going to be calling plays, that he's not going to be coaching scheme or players. It's more to just lend his wisdom. And then where I'm probably most undecided is in how much I believe that from Matt Rhule, and how much I believe it's just an attempt to keep this from mushrooming into something where we are getting overly excited and, calling him the offensive coordinator in waiting or whatever it might be, or looking through binoculars in the from the press box at the Coliseum to see if Dana's speaking into a headset. I have a good sense or a feeling that his influence is going to be as significant as it can be, but I'm not sure how significant it can be because it's just been such a short period of time. This team's been working on this stuff since March, if not sooner, and he's been here for a week. It's tough to make a huge impact in that short of a period of time.
Yeah, when you think about Dana Holgorsen's offenses, it's a lot different than what it is right now in a variety of different ways. But I think the main tenet to that is just sort of the tempo and the urgency at which it moves. So I've been thinking about that a little bit. Like, can you take the offense that Nebraska is trying to attempt right now, do the same things that you've been doing, and just kind of give it a kick in the butt a little bit, light its butt on fire, like get it moving. Yeah. I think that would help a lot of people. Like I hope that is a thing that we see a bit of in the final 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I just wonder I wonder how that's put into practice. I think it would be great, and I think it's fantastic in theory to say, oh, he's gonna light a spark, he's gonna find a way to. I mean, if he's a genius, he might be able to pick out like one area of Nebraska's scheme. Like, let's say he looks at Nebraska's infamous screen passing game, and he says, all right, well, here's what you need to do with the blocking scheme in order to fix this. And they go out to practice twice during the bye week, and voila, it's fixed. Like that. All right. That sounds great. I just don't know if you can do it. I think it's really difficult to fix even small things unless you're just making glaring tactical errors, which perhaps Nebraska is.
I literally mean tempo. Like I think the offense can go and should go faster. And they have shown their at spurts this year, more earlier in the year than lately, for the record, that they can move it a little bit, like get up to the ball and go. And it seems like they have a button that they can press, and all of a sudden they go into kind of like 4 minute or 2 minute mode. And I don't know. I like it with a little bit of a little bit of giddy up behind it. And I think it's good for the quarterback too. You're allowing the defense to set and huddle and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if that's something that they can, that they can do all the time. There's always going to be a balancing act to it, but just would love to see that in the final 3 weeks.
Yeah. Let's just hope for Nebraska's sake that this is not the next iteration of Bob Diaco and Mark Whipple, because those two, I think, generated a lot of false hope for this was the fix. This guy was the fix-it man for the offense. This guy was the fix-it man for the defense. We've been down that road before. So don't get into the mode, and it's even more pronounced. The possibility is even more pronounced to fall into that kind of a trap right now because it's in such a short time frame. Those two hires were made over off seasons to fix flailing offensive and defensive groups, and they didn't work out in the way that anyone really hoped around the Nebraska program. So maybe the third time's a charm with Holgorsen, and bringing him in during a season is something that can work in his favor. We'll see. It's a gamble on the part of Matt Rhule. If you're going to throw a lot into this basket, maybe he'll answer the question today and to how much he's really willing to put on Holgorsen. I don't know. We'll ask the question. We'll see what we get. One other topic I want to address before we get to the last segment is the idea that Nebraska is where it's at in recruiting right now. The coaches were on the road over the weekend and even last week, out seeing prospects. Nebraska did lose a commitment from Bryson Hayes, the wide receiver out of the state of Kansas, who defected to Kansas. And I think as part of the big purge coming with roster numbers, this is something that is not significant. Good, very, very well might be a good player, but Nebraska's going to need to make cuts, and that includes the recruiting class. So it will be fine without Bryson Hayes. But what kind of sense do you get, Connor, locally and even on the national level as far as what's happening with Nebraska and recruiting? Because as we said with the momentum in November, you can't stand still. You can't just hold serve. You got to go forward, or otherwise you're going backward.
I think there's a couple big fish out there still that Nebraska feels like it's got some, it's got some bait in the water, and they're just waiting for a couple, that one big chomp at the end to, I guess, do a I don't fish very much, but I think that's right. We've talked about Dawson Merritt this entire season. He is still committed to Alabama at the moment. I know Nebraska checked in on him last week. There's still a 5-star athlete out of San Antonio that Nebraska is still in on at the moment, and Michael Terry, who still hasn't committed anywhere, who in Nebraska, and everyone thought that was going to happen a long time ago. So I think there's a couple big fish out there that could sort of, dictate the feeling on where this thing is headed. Outside of that, Mitch, you mentioned the numbers, they're kind of done. I mean, they're going to hold spots. They're going to have spots for a few guys out there if they decide to end up at Nebraska at the last minute here. By the way, there's only like 4 weeks until signing day at this point. But outside of that, I mean, they're pretty close to wrapped up and onto future classes. The momentum feels okay right now, but winning would help.
Yeah, it's been very quiet around many of the committed prospects for Nebraska, including TJ Lateef, the quarterback from Orange Lutheran, who will be in the playoffs this Friday night on the night before Nebraska plays at USC. So maybe some attention on Nebraska's QB recruit for the first time in quite some time, as Nebraska fans and Nebraska media are out in Southern California this weekend. He's had an excellent season, by the way. All right, when we come back, we're going to check in with Nebraska basketball. Huskers have gotten this season off to a start, and check in with Nebraska volleyball, which continues to roll along. That's coming up next. All right, can you believe it's basketball season? I haven't been to a game yet. Connor, I know you've been to some games. You continue to watch basketball on your weekends and some of your weeknights. Can't wait. I can't wait to get out to the basketball arena. And if I'm not going to be covering a game, I'm going to go to some games, and game time, it's going to make that experience so much easier for me to get tickets. Game Time offers tickets not just to basketball games and football games, but also to concerts and shows and all kinds of different events that you might want to attend over this upcoming holiday season. Check out the feature of the Game Time app called Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of options. How about an upcoming game at the CHI Health Center? Maybe Creighton, Nebraska is a game that you want to see coming up next week, or an NBA game. Game Time allows you to customize your spot inside a basketball arena. I love that you can get curated deals to make it easier to find the best prices on great seats. Game Time provides seat views before you buy. It's got the super deal, which is a unique feature that you need to examine. They have event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and as always, there's that lowest price guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, welcome back. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic here. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone. Third and final segment on this Monday of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. As we mentioned, we'll hear from Matt Rhule on Monday shortly before noon. To follow Matt Rhule, Fred Hoiberg will be up to speak to the media after Nebraska basketball starts 2-0. Huskers beat UT Rio Grande Valley by 20 to open the season. And then on Saturday, we saw Nebraska beat Reggie Theus and Bethune-Cookman. He is the coach, former NBA player. 63 to 58. Nebraska sludged through a victory against Bethune-Cookman. Juwan Gary and Bryce Williams in double figures. Huskers shot 4 of 22 from three-point range. They won because they got to the line 26 times, made 21 of those shots compared to just 5 of 7 from Bethune-Cookman. Fairleigh Dickinson, which was in Omaha on Sunday, will visit PBA on Wednesday night. Creighton put up, 90-something against the Fairleigh Dickinsons? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's the bar. There's the bar set for Nebraska on Wednesday night. Because Creighton's coming up a week from Friday, which is the night before the Wisconsin football game in Lincoln. Nebraska will be in downtown Omaha to play the Jays, who are a different brand of challenge than what the Huskers have faced against UT Rio Grande Valley and Bethune-Cookman. Before that is a game against St. Mary's on Sunday at the Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So St. Mary's is 2-0. And also a step up in competition from what Nebraska's faced so far. What have you thought if you've had a chance to see Fred's guys out there on the court?
Well, it's been pretty ugly. They're 10 of 41 from 3-point range in 2 games. They turned the ball over 21 times against Bethune-Cookman. It's gritty, not pretty, I guess. They're finding a way, but they're gonna have to step it up. Both on the offensive end, I think you have to find out kind of who they are. I'm looking at the box score from the other night, and I've seen clips. I have been in person for neither of the first 2 games for Nebraska basketball, and I'm not a subscriber of Big Ten Plus.
I am. So I saw good chunks of both of them, and it was difficult to watch at times.
It's hard. Yeah. So I don't know. This is the added benefit of doing the schedule the way that they're doing it. They do have Fairleigh Dickinson, who's a 300+ KenPom team at this point, who Creighton beat pretty good, like you said, on Sunday. And then your 2 non-conference games are back-to-back within 5 days of each other. Those are your only big 2 non-conference games. So they'll have to see where they're at in those 2 games, and then they're back to buy Game Central for a couple before they get into that sneaky conference play in December.
I think a lot of people would be shocked if on that Saturday of the Wisconsin game, Nebraska is anything other than 3-2, and perhaps there's a chance to get that win against St. Mary's in Sioux Falls, but I don't know. With what I've seen from this team, they're not beating anybody good at this point. Any opponent that's like in that top 100. I don't see it. Now they of course it's early and they're going to have opportunities aplenty to improve, but I'm interested in where that's going to come from with this group, because it's this is not the team from a year ago with its athleticism and ability to shoot. There's no Keisei Tominaga who's gonna bail you out with 4 3-pointers over a 2-minute stretch. So we'll see. It could be a rough start for Nebraska basketball.
I will say, like, Creighton has shown warts in their 2 games, as well. So I mean, they were pushed by UTRGV same way Nebraska was pushed by UTRGV. So there's that piece. I don't think they're ungettable, but they'll be big barometer games in those 2. Then there was volleyball, Mitch, who on the other side of things absolutely keeps things rolling. So they have this thing now where they are like the most popular show. They're like the Taylor Swift of volleyball at this point.
The Beatles, to go with John Cook's analogy, the 68-year-old. They're the Beatles.
They're the Beatles. Yes, maybe younger people would prefer Taylor Swift or even Caitlin Clark. Where
don't go there. Like, that was brought up during the broadcast on Saturday night. I couldn't believe that it was mentioned in the post-game interview with Cook that it was the Caitlin Clark effect that Nebraska volleyball was benefiting. I don't know what was meant. Well, we've heard this over the last year, and it is a trigger point for Nebraska fans. Nebraska volleyball has been good, has been dominant long before Caitlin Clark was dribbling a basketball. So let's just not no.
Okay,
not the Caitlin Clark effect.
I mean, it is similar to the effect that she has on people, but it's not like, you shouldn't, if there was a name for it, you shouldn't call it that, because like you said, Nebraska volleyball was there first. Either way, they still out at Oregon and Washington, and they swept both of those matches. They're 24-1. They are the best team in the country. They are the best. They're looking like the best versions of themselves right now, which is pretty much where you grade them, because that's how it works with this team. Like, they're kind of their own barometer, their own measurement system. There's still some tough matches to come with Wisconsin and Penn State, but this is going to be a team that has a chance to win a national championship.
Yeah, if you're not paying attention to them, and you generally check in December when they get to the NCAA tournament, check in with them now, because they're fun to watch. They've won 21 consecutive matches now, and a 20-0 league finish, which John Cook will tell you over and over and over. Just winning the Big Ten, let alone going 20-0, is more difficult than winning the national championship. So they've got 6 left, and it's feasible. Nebraska's lost 4 sets in 14 conference matches so far. Sweeps at Wisconsin, at Oregon, at Washington, some of the better teams in the Big Ten outside of Lincoln. So they still have to go to Penn State on Black Friday. That's the second to last match of the regular season. That'll be tough. And Wisconsin, as you mentioned, Connor, comes to Lincoln. But what they're really getting right now is just totally balanced play all around. Taylor Landfair, the transfer from Minnesota, has figured things out and come into her own and claimed that starting spot opposite Harper Murray at the other outside position, and it's made Nebraska an even more balanced offense. They're impossible to stop, essentially, when they're playing at their best, and we saw that in longer stretches out on the West Coast, Pacific Northwest swing this last weekend than what we've seen for the first 20 or so matches of the year.
All right, Mitch. Well, we'll see where the football conversation heads today after Matt Rhule talks, and of course we will we'll have you covered on the podcast tomorrow. We appreciate you making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, how about this? Check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Craig Sherman puts the Big Ten first. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.